Hey Forge Costanzas, real quick, what is a skin for the uninitiated? Well, in video games, it's a lot of work to design, rig, model, and animate a character. It's even more to introduce mechanics and abilities. It's relatively less work to create new artwork, both 2D and 3D, that uses the existing framework or base for the character. So a video game will usually use generally the same proportions and bones as the original, but you're changing the outer appearance and ornamentation, thus the name skin. Sometimes this is as simple as switching out the textures and colors of a character, but more often a new model is built on the same base. The skins that are usually made in games vary from color swaps or costume changes, or just adding a mustache onto the character, all the way to creating advanced progressions of their stories or an alternate history. From a business perspective, and no, I won't get too deep into the ethics and morals of it, it's become a very viable and sometimes incredibly profitable option to offer the game for free and provide the option for premium skins that look cooler but don't modify the gameplay at all. This makes it so a percentage of players pay enough to fund support for the game so that some who never pay a dime can still play for free. I'm not endorsing any of these games, I'm not saying that one does it better than another, we're just here to use the concept to make art, and that's it. It's become such a large part of games' business models that bigger studios will outsource to smaller studios whose sole purpose is generating new cosmetic items. So chances are, if you're looking for work in the industry, something like this will come across your desk. Today though, we're not trying to integrate anything into an existing game, but we are indulging ourselves in the incredibly fun exercise of imagining new, non-canonical alternate universe versions of characters. Along the way, we'll talk about the specific principles you'd need to keep in mind to keep your character recognizable despite the thematic changes. We'll start with a skin idea that I had for my character Jacqueline, a lamb wielding a giant key. The skin here turns her into a sci-fi Jackalian, which naming credit goes to Mark for that one. Jacqueline here actually is from a game, but this skin is again completely non-canonical. At first, I experimented with a version of her made of ice or stone, but the shapes started to become something kind of reptilian. When you're creating a skin based off of an existing idea, you're starting with the basic silhouette and retaining anything that's sort of an essential piece of the model. If it's rigged to move and be animated, like the ears, retaining the basic shape of them is a good idea. But once you have that base, not only can you start altering the silhouette, you can create new shapes inside of them, which leads to new proportions. Here, for example, some of the shapes on her face take different shapes and through lines, and the floof on top of Jack's head becomes a sort of dorsal crest. Next up, we're creating a skin for the cosmic wandering character, the Wanderlumen. Initially, I tried a version where he was a stuffed bear, and then a version with his eye being a sort of light on a mining helmet with the face then on the belly. But once I started down the road of making him a poison dart frog, everything started to click. I circled back to that idea of him being made of plush and thought he would work well as a pincushion. You know, the ones that are
so red you look like a tomato.
Wanderlumen's head tail is a sort of necessary piece of geometry, so it was easy enough to turn that into a little yarn beanie. The extra things that we add, like the pins, are just objects that don't require animation and can simply move with the existing rig. The staff that he carries very conveniently becomes an oversized stitch ripper. The skin is officially titled Dart Frog Wanderlumen, dart being both a kind of frog and a term in sewing. Next is the one I probably ended up spending the most time on. For Parcel, the deputy timekeeper, I was imagining a non-canonical future where after spending so much time in the timekeeper's sanctuary, she became made of clockwork. These initial concepts were definitely fun, but I was too tempted instead to work on a giant robot mecha version of her instead, in the same mechanical vein. I think especially with a human character that doesn't have as distinct a shape language as the others, it's important to accentuate and remind the viewer of the existing character within the skin. Skins operate almost like an inside joke. because these aren't really character designs that work as well on their own as they do when you're aware of the character that they are spun off of. A lot of the same interior lines and shapes of Parcel are retained in her mecha version, and as an easy way to indicate scale, we have lots of panel lines. Here, her ponytail becomes a sort of energy protrusion behind the head, and her signature tool, the second hand, becomes an energy beam attached to the side of her arm. I really took my time with the rendering on this concept because it was just so fun, but adding lots of shadow and lighting helps sell this as a massively scaled up version of the character towering over a city. The final skin that I worked on isn't so much an interesting alternate universe, but a really fun and campy spin on Biko, who is usually a green field medic made of a viscous, healing goo. You'll see Biko canonically in one of the big projects that I'm working on now that will debut later this year. There's a few quick sketches that turn Biko into a bird, and a flame-formed version called Blue Flame Biko, but for the concept that I actually pursued, we're using a lot of the same shapes and sensibilities that come with retaining a liquid character in a solid suit, but instead we've brought the ocean onto land with Deep Sea Biko. This is an especially goofy skin because it's combining diving equipment from different eras and different kinds of diving. Obviously, a scuba diver wouldn't use a diving bell. If we were to take any of these concepts further into a game, we've really only done the first step. We'd want to create turnarounds and different poses that communicate the design to a 3D artist, and to sell the story or concept that we've created to the players of the game. For me though, simply making these designs was almost a relief, when so often I'm tied up in the story, what I can and can't reveal about a character, or how it ties into something that already exists. In a really crude, vain way, this is almost like creating fan art of your own characters. It's shapes and ideas that you're already familiar with, but parodying them, or using them as a jumping off point for something that's purely fun. If you feel yourself really locked up by some of those same inhibitions, this is a really fun challenge. Can you change the fantasy of your character completely and yet still make it clear that they are the same character? That's it for me today. I'm making new videos every week here on Character Design Forge. You can get my course Learn Character Design at learncharacterdesign.com. It's over 18 hours of a comprehensive character design curriculum. This month's Biko's backpack looks like this. You can get over at patreon.com/bageldenizen. It's a personal package of new original art that shows up in your mailbox. You can follow me at bageldenizen on Instagram, Twitter, Twitch, and TikTok. Thanks so much for watching, and have fun creating.